So good morning to everyone, good evening to everyone. So we continue with our Bodhicharyavatara. So first we begin with the regular opening prayers. So in the style of Drikungkagyu, we always open our practices with the Bodhicitta aspiration that Kyopa Jigten Sungön, the words came from Kyopa Jigten Sungön. And it has two parts, the aspiration Bodhicitta, which we repeat 3 times, followed by action Bodhicitta, which we repeat once. Then it's the refuge prayer, the refuge commitment, composed by Lord Atisha, followed by the 4 immeasurables, which is taken from the sutras and tantras. Then a 1-verse recitation of the 7-fold worship, the 7-fold puja, and that is taken from the king of noble aspiration prayers of the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra, which is the verse 12 of that king of noble aspiration prayers. So then, so that's what we will do together as a group. Today, we are going to do this in the Tibetan. Then when I start reciting kind of fast, traditionally that is the part that the person giving the teachings would do, which is in this case, often it's to invoke the blessings of the lineage, the blessings of the great masters of the past, in order to guide and protect the person giving the teachings to not make too many mistakes, to be inspired and guided by the lineage. And then there is a short recitation for requesting the teachings and offering mandala as part of that request. Dala Dhawa Jebe Dra Nopar Jebe Geng Tarba Dan Tham Je Gembe Baridu Jobra Jeba Tham Jege Su Jebe Ma Nangkada Nambe Senjen Tham Je Dewa Dan Den Tunga Dandra Nerdu Lana Me Pa Yang Dabra Zobe Chanju Rinpo Je Tobra Jo Dala Dhawa Jebe Dra no par jebe ke tharpa dan tham je kembe bardu chopra jeba tham je ke su jebe ma nang kha dang nam pe sen chen tham je dewa dan ten dung ya dan de ne du la na me pa ya la bra so be chan ju ren po je to bra ja da la Dhamma jebe dra no par jebe kek tharpa da tham je kembe baridu jopra jeba tham je gi su jebe ma nang ka dang nyam pe sem jen tham je dewa dhan ten dung ya dang de nir du la na me pa ya dabra zobe chan ju rinpo je to bar je sama gege bardu lunga yizum ge wala go mashi bardu lunga yizum ge wala go du dereng ne sunde ne ma santa samge bardu lunga yizum ge wala go sonje Chodan sugi chonam la chanju bardu dani kyamsu ji Dagi jinsu ki pe sonam ki drola penchir sanje drubra shu Sanje chodan sugi chonam la chanju bardu dani kyamsu ji Dagi jinsu ki pe sonam ki Drola penchir sanje drupra shu sanje chodan sugi chonam la chanju bardu dani kyapsu chi Dagi jinsu kibe sonam ki Drola penchir sanje drupra shu manam kada nyampe senchen tamche dewa dang dewe gindan dambra gyuchi Dunya dang dunya gi gyudang drawa gyuchi Dunga mebe dewa dhame drawa gyuchi Nering chadang nidang drawa Tanyang la nebra gyuchi Amanang kadang nyampe senchen tamche dewa dang dewe gindan dambra gyuchi Dunya dang dunya gi gyudang drawa gyuchi Dunya me pe dewa dhammi drawa gyurji nering chadang nidang drawe tangyang la nebra gyurji amanang kadang nyam pe senche tamche dewa dang dewe gyudang dambra gyurji Dunya dang dunya gi gyudang drawa gyurji Dunya me pe dewa dhammi drawa gyurji Nering chadang nidang drawe tangyang la nebra gyurji Jase wadang chujing shampar dang jise yirang kushing sowa Yewa jungse dhagi chi sangpa tamche sobe changju chirngu Druje jawan dile naru dama mi tabu padu jidin gong kadin zundin sawe la me sham sakju la ma yidam chokyong la suwa depso dhaji jen je lo gyam dengi do me zang ling gen drape dong sun yong la gyam so me gyawa druje chang pa jik den gong po sham la du du tang du sam gyu gyo le me jin ji lo shi tu je jen ningi mun pa sa ne gyam Semto de do do bar jen je lo hong jin yo jin no chang sang pe ma ge sa tong po la ya sen chu gen ngon dum nyen pe ma ju ne she shu do go do kan do mang pong ko ge ge je se da de ge jin je lo ji she su so guru pe ma se de ho ngo men chu gen ye ge bu dang len do sun sang je kun jin ngo wo ni Ran sen chu gung gung sun tong ze ba za we la me shab la so wa de Zoji Bogi Juji Medo Dori La Linshin Degen Body Sanje Shin De Make the Bowa Ye Drogon Namda Shin La Geware Sho Kusun Yozo La Mezzo Namla Chinan Sansun De Shin Nigi Jo Dalu Lonju Nansi Yonshela La Mecho Ginga Dubse De So Jasa Wadan Jujin Shamba Dan Jesa Yiran Kushin So Waye Gewa Chunse Dagi Chisamba Tamje Zobe Janju Guru Deva Dagi Nirana Mandala Pradeja So Semje Namgi Sambada Loye Jidra Jidawa Jejun Tumon Tebaye Chogi Golo Gordu So. So once again, good morning and good evening. Some of you maybe know, today I'm not live casting from Asheville, North Carolina. I am up in New York City, in the Brooklyn area. Nothing in particular, just a change of scene, just to shake the mind a little bit. And mind was getting a little groggy and stale. Pandemic, getting stuck. So just a change of scene to maybe, wake up the mind a little bit. Fortunate that there are some friends who live in Brooklyn. They have a very nice apartment, and they too have decided to shake up, their minds a little. And so, ironically, they have gone to the mountains. And so, me who live in the mountains have now gone to the apartment in the city. So this is samsaric situation, Those who are here want to be there. Those who are there want to be here. So I remember, when I was young, I want to be old, But then now that I'm old, I know enough to not want to be young, because to do that, there's only one direction to go, but not ready to go that direction yet. So just have to put up with being old. In one very provocative Vajra statement, Gyöpa Jigten Sumgön said, he said that in this cycle of confusion, what's called samsara, in this cycle of confusion, he says it's the body that cycles. Very provocative statement, very unusual statement. Because normally we say it's the mind. that cycles, right? It's the mind that goes from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. Surely not this body. But very provocatively, he says, in confused existence, the body is that which cycles. Of course, if you ask Kyoba Rinpoche to kind of clarify, still he will say, yes, at the end of this life, it's not quite, this body becomes a new body. So he knows his Dharma, of course. But that statement is a very amazing statement, because what he's pointing to is, as long as we are in confused existence, samsara, what actually is the vehicle for moving around, for being confused, for being lost, for being bewildered, it's body. It's not mind. Mind, there is the level of mind that is confused. Then there is the nature of mind that is free from confusion. So the true essence of the mind is not that which suffers. It's the confused mind in cooperation with bodies that confusion is experienced and reproduced again and again and again and again. So that statement that in confused existence is the body that goes again and again and again and again, I feel goes directly to explaining our situation. So we have to take good care of the body. But when we say good care, we mean the kind of care that understands the interdependence between the outer, inner, and secret aspects of body and mind. All states of being, whether those we label as happy or we label as miserable, they are all interdependently arising. The more we understand and appreciate interdependently arising, and of course interdependently ceasing, the more we kind of understand this principle of interdependence. The notion that, the understanding that the way things happen due to many causes and conditions coming together, the more we see that, I personally can say the less we are likely to get frustrated when things don't go our way. But this is not like resignation, you know? This is not like saying, oh, it's fated. Oh, it's God's will. No, because at the same time also, the more you understand interdependence, the less you're going to get frustrated when things don't go your way. It's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is you also become more inspired to act skillfully, intentionally, and make more skillful choices. Because you know that all those are the necessary ingredients of bringing things together for the outcome that we want. So then we become more energized, more inspired to make skillful, wise choices. On the other hand, then the other side, the first point of, as well, you know, not so easily getting frustrated when things don't turn out our way. Now back to the body. So although, right, Gilbert Rinpoche says, you know, in confused existence in samsara is the body that wanders, is the body that cycles around. However, Shantideva also says, but when bodhicitta has arisen in us, then this body, which later on in Shantideva, in chapter 8, he details, right, the unclean nature of the body, the suffering nature of the body, the unreliable nature of the body. There, you know, it seems as if, you know, he is anti-body, as we would say, now, not antibodies, but anti-body, against the body. But no, that's only one side. You can say that he is against the body when the body is a vehicle for suffering. In the similes that he gave for the wonders of bodhicitta, he says that when you have bodhicitta, this body, which is previously the vehicle for suffering, right, becomes a temple for the true Buddha. And so, slowly we will see, in a way, Bodhicharyavatara, in a way, right, like chapter 8, right, that chapter that is very focused on the problems, or the problems of desire or attachment. In a way, we can see that as it pertains to body, in this case, it's not desire and attachment itself that directly gives rise to suffering. It's the frustration that comes in the wake of desires and attachment not working. Right? A desire that is not fulfilled. An attachment to something that keeps slipping away. It's when those things happen that gives rise to frustration, and frustration is where suffering comes in. Now, so what we do when we understand this, you see, both us, ordinary people, and the great beings who are further along on the path, we both kind of understand this. Like, oh, it's actually frustration that is the problem. Maybe we never worded it this way, but on a gut level, we get that. So then we confused beings, we say, okay, if that's the case, then I will keep working on fulfilling all my desires, holding more tightly to what I'm attached to so that they don't slip away. That's our solution to the problem of frustration. Now, of course, that solution will never work because it is not in the nature of things that all desires can be fulfilled. In fact, most desires cannot be fulfilled. It is not in the nature of things that they don't fall apart. Therefore, no matter how tightly you hold, and in fact, sometimes because of how tightly you hold, they fall apart. You hold, they fall apart even faster. But we keep trying to solve the problem by working harder to fulfill all our desires, holding more tightly so that, it will not slip away, whatever we are attached to. Whereas those sublime beings that we so admire, they know. Like you and me, they understand frustration is the problem. But then they also know the solution is not to work harder to fulfill all your desires, or to hold on more tightly so that what you're attached to will never escape you. They know that can never bring about freedom from suffering. So what do they do instead? These sublime beings, what makes them sublime? They turn to bodhicitta. So likewise, we turn to this topic as well. And bodhicitta is the central topic of Shantideva's Bodhicharyavatara. Bodhicitta in its two aspects of aspiration and action. In fact, mostly dedicated to Action Bodhicitta, this book. So last time we met, we have covered until verse 26 or stanza 26. Stanza 21 to 26 talks about the benefits, the greatness of aspiration bodhicitta. Today we are going to cover the stanzas that talk about the power or the benefit of action bodhicitta. Which reminds me, I want to apologize for the last class, which we changed to Monday. And some of you didn't know that we changed to Monday because on Tuesday I was traveling, flying. But we will do better to try to inform everyone of any plan change. Yeah. So before we start verse 27, I think we should read together 21 to 20, from 21 to 30. So let's read this together. So in the translation rooms, we can all simultaneously read in the different languages. Keeping in mind that 21 to 26 is the benefits of aspiration bodhicitta. Then starting from 27 is the benefits or the power of action bodhicitta. If with kindly generosity one merely has the wish to soothe the aching heads of other beings, such merit knows no bounds. No need to speak then of the wish to drive away the endless pain of each and every living being, bringing them unbounded excellence. Could our father or our mother ever have so generous a wish? Do the very gods, the rishis, even Brahma, harbor such benevolence as this? For in the past they never, even in their dreams, wish something like this, even for themselves. How could they do so for another's sake? This aim to bring about the benefit of beings, a benefit that others wish not even for themselves, this noble, jewel-like state of mind, arises truly wondrous, never seen before. This pain-dispelling draught, this cause of joy for those who wander through the world, this precious attitude, this jewel of mind, how shall we calculate its merit? If the simple thought to be of help to others exceeds in worth the worship of the Buddhas, what need is there to speak of actual deeds that bring about the weal and benefit of beings? For beings long to free themselves from misery, but misery itself they follow and pursue. They long for joy, but in their ignorance destroy it, as they would their foe. But those who fill with bliss all beings destitute of joy, who cut all pain and suffering away from those weighed down with misery, who drive away the darkness of their ignorance, what virtue could be matched with theirs? What friend could be compared to them? What merit is there similar to this? Yeah, so verse 27, beginning with the benefits of action, bodhicitta. So here it says, like if the simple thought to be of help to others, and that is aspiration bodhicitta. So in the section on aspiration bodhicitta, it says, it first starts like this. So I want to kind of point out, it's the way Shantideva reasons, right? First in that section he says, even if you just seeing someone having a migraine, and you want to free them from that migraine, that is so wonderful. He says, but with aspiration bodhicitta, you are not just wanting to be free from a migraine. You want them to be free completely and forever from suffering. And you know that the only way they can do that is if they become Buddhists. And you are wishing that for them. Right? And then he says, wow, how great, right? How amazing that kind of wish is. Then here at the beginning of this section, which he's now trying to encourage us to go beyond wishing, he says, now, when we begin to act on that wish, he's saying, can you imagine, how great the effects of that is going to be? So these first two lines of 27, it says, if the simple thought to be of help to others exceeds in worth the worship of the Buddhas. These two lines. Okay, so here, I want to take this opportunity to have us, think more seriously about just these two lines. The main point of this verse is the next two lines. But before we get to the main point, let's look at these two lines first. So in many sutras and tantras, you will come across lots of discussions, lots of examples, lots of encouragement on how meritorious, how great, and how much blessings you will get from making offerings to Buddhas, for worshipping Buddhas, for paying homage to Buddhas. And there are entire sutras, about this thick, just going again and again and again about if you just even offer one drop of water to the Buddhas, it will be so great and so great and so great. Now you should offer 1,000 bowls of water. If you offer even just, one petal of flower to the Buddhas, the merit is so great, and therefore you should offer billions and billions of flowers to Buddhas, and it just goes on and on and on. So then, Buddhist cultures really like this. Big temples, big shrines, After one big temple with a big shrine, let's build another big temple with a big shrine behind this big temple and the big shrine. Then at the inauguration of that big temple and big shrine, you start a new project to the right of that building. You need another bigger one. Then to the left, you need another bigger one. Then you need to offer this. Then you need to offer that. Oh, just non-stop, okay? I'm not saying that's bad. But what I am saying is that we are forgetting the next point that is being made, which is even just the thought of wanting to help other sentient beings surpasses the greatness of making offerings to these great beings. That point is easy to forget, because helping other sentient beings, it's not easy. So we don't want, we're not so ready to go do that. Instead, it's easier if we just make 1,000 flowers to offer, 1,000 waters to offer, 1,000 lights to offer. Because basically when you do those things, you know for sure the Buddha, if he doesn't like it, he doesn't complain. But when you're helping someone, if they don't like it, they'll complain. Then you're like, ugh, I'm helping you and you're complaining, so ungrateful. So it's like, yes, the sutras, the tantras talk about, oh, the butter lamp that is made of gold, the butter lamp that is made of, rubies, how great these offerings are. But the point of those things is always to end by saying, but bodhicitta is even greater. But most Buddhist cultures get stuck in the first point, the point of contrast, rather than the main point. So lots of us end up, competing in superficial things. Like how much gold is in this temple, how big the offerings are in that monastery. So like in a place like Thailand, sometimes called, like it's a place with literally, 10,000 stupas. If you want to build another stupa, people will throw money at you. And if you say you want to build a hospital, I don't know, do we need another hospital? So, invest in sentient beings. Don't invest in statues. Invest in bodhisattvas. Don't invest in buildings. These objects of inspiration, like stupa, statues, of course there's a reason for them to be there. There is a reason why we should build them. Yes, we're not talking about don't build them, but we're talking about not losing sight, for the purpose of these things. It's so that it will take us to the next step. But if we are not only just stuck at the first step, but when given a choice, we choose the first step rather than the next step, then we are completely turning things upside down and think that we're practicing Dharma. Then 20 years later, 50 years later, you have things to show. But those things are going to fall apart. Sometimes before you fall apart, they fall apart. So I know, I know people in Nepal, Nepali people, they say, they say, when Christians come to town, come to this village, they build schools and hospitals. When Buddhists come to this town and village, they build thrones and temples. So especially, those of you in Asia listening, please think about this. Those of us in the West, different set of circumstance. In the West, yes, I think the external signs of the Dharma is still so few, so few and so far in between. Then it's okay, you provide these visible, I would call them visible cue. Visible signs. Someone will see a stupa, right, and get curious, like, oh, what is this? So in the West, it's different. I'm not making absolute statements. This is about not forgetting, what is most skillful, what is most helpful now. So especially in Asia, there are enough signs already everywhere. People don't even look at it anymore. For sure, Buddhists don't need it. If Buddhists need another stupa, they're not Buddhists. Oh, I don't have enough stupas to glorify me. Buddha Bob has 9 stupas, I only have 7 in my name. I mean, if they're thinking like that, right, they're not Buddhists. They don't need that. But the donors, we want to show. And like I said, not only we want to show, but it's a little messy helping actual beings. They may or may not appreciate, Whereas when you help or offer to Buddhists, they're always just sitting there calmly smiling. Now, a footnote here, important one. I also have to say, building schools and hospitals and, meaning doing things to serve sentient beings itself, right? Those actions, they're not yet bodhicitta, right? They're not yet action bodhicitta. They're only action bodhicitta if they are informed by, motivated by this wisdom aspect, which is to understand that in the end, the only true lasting way of achieving happiness for ourselves and for others is to be free from confusion. Yeah, so that aspect is important. Yeah. So here it says, what need is there to speak of actual deeds that bring about the weal and benefit of beings? So Shantideva says, as great as, making pujas to the Buddhas and all that, the great merit that the sutras explain in detail. But in the sutras and tantras, Buddhas also say, but just the thought of wanting to help others surpass in merit to all these kinds of offerings. Then, furthermore, Buddha also taught, now, think about when you actually put into action your wish. Then, the merit is truly and truly unimaginable. Now, also important to point out, don't misunderstand and think, oh, action bodhicitta, that means going out there to do big things. Build hospitals, build schools, start a project to save all the strays from the streets, all that. I mean, don't get me wrong, all those things are good, but I would be giving the wrong teachings if you think only when you do that, is it action bodhicitta? No. It's not like that. Once we have aspiration bodhicitta in our minds, in our hearts, then if you say, what is that? Go look at the opening prayer. Okay, Jigdan Simgun lays it out very nicely. That is aspiration bodhicitta. Okay, so once you have aspiration bodhicitta in your heart, then choosing to give, right, even one grain of rice to an ant, that becomes action bodhicitta. Choosing to refrain from squishing a mosquito, that's disciplined conduct, that becomes an act of action bodhicitta. As small as that. the effect becomes great. And how much greater if you actually, yes, your circumstance allows you to start a hospital, a school, or but just to point out that you don't have to think until big projects before you think, oh, this only then is action bodhicitta. No, it becomes action bodhicitta when aspiration bodhicitta is in the heart. Then all the little, and of course the middling, and the big, it doesn't matter at that point. Because in a way, the ultimate aspect of bodhicitta is to give up self-grasping. Next verse, another beautiful one. Here it says, for beings long to free themselves from misery, but misery itself they follow and pursue. They long for joy, but in their ignorance, on the other hand, they long for joy. But in their ignorance, they destroy it as they would their foe. So what we have identified as enemy and undesirable, so we don't want them, but what we end up doing is we follow and pursue them to no ends. Then what we identify as joy, we know, oh, this is joy, we want this, but we go about destroying the causes of happiness as if those causes are our enemies. And that really describes the mess that we're in. Elsewhere it says, you want to go east, you walk towards the west. You don't want heat, but you rush towards the sun. So the last few days, I've been thinking of this east-west, because, oh my gosh, especially when you are not clear your mind, when you are like in a hurry, then you get confused, I want to go uptown, I take the downtown train. I want to go downtown, I took the uptown train. I want to go east, I ended up heading west. So lost in this subway samsara, just riding around and around and around. Every trip, is double the time, Then yesterday someone gave me a good tip in terms of this. They say the name of those streets, in Manhattan. Somebody said to me yesterday, said, downtown numbers go down, uptown numbers go up. So, oh, okay, so that's a good one to remember. And the plot thickens, when 57th Street has more than one station, Then if you're with someone who is not from here as well, and you tell them, okay, we'll meet at 57th Street station, it could be like from east to west, there's several 57, So part of the problem with confusion is that in a state of confusion, you can feel like you are so certain. I am at 57th Street, where are you? And the other person is like, look, I'm at 57th Street too, you're not here. So there's so much certainty, in confusion. And that's part of the problem of samsara. So anyway, verse 28, this is helpful for us to try to remember this verse in particular, because it also helps us to be kinder to others. It's sort of the equivalent of how sometimes people say, based on the Christian kind of view, they're like, hate the sin and not the sinner. Yeah, that kind of an expression. Here, of course, we don't use this kind of expression. Here, Shantideva is pointing out how, even the people who we can see are habitually doing things that are not skillful, things that are harmful, often they do it not because they are thinking, how can I harm today? Often they are thinking just, maybe themselves, oh, how can I be good to myself today? Then they choose the wrong causes. They choose to act. Their actions that they choose are unskillful, lack of wisdom. So then that leads to suffering. It's helpful to remember that, especially in places where political differences become so strong. Then it's easy for us to imagine the other people who are politically different from us. That all they do every day is just sit around to figure out how can I destroy good. No. Very few people are like that. I won't say no, zero, but very few people operate like that. Everyone is operating on the basis of kind of confusion. And in the state of confusion, choosing the wrong choices, the unskillful choice of action, then suffering results. So just like when a child is having a tantrum, we are not going to do anyone any good by yelling and screaming at the child, by smacking the child. That's not going to work. The child is going to grow up with more problems for him or herself and for everyone around this person. Neither am I saying, like you let the child who is in a tantrum to go destroy his toys, or worse, his friends' toys, and cause harm. No, we're also not saying that. So on the chapter on patience, chapter on patience, chapter 6, Shantideva will go into more details about that aspect. How to relate to, or how to handle when you see people clearly in their state of confusion, choosing actions that cause harm to themselves, cause harm to other people, how to respond to those situations. Chapter 6 especially gives us those tools, gives us those advice that can be very helpful. So the last line of verse 30, it says that there is no merit, there is no greatness that comes close to someone who, if you go now to beginning of verse 30, no equal to someone who, filled with bliss, all beings that are destitute of joy, who cut all pain and suffering away from those weighed down with misery. So when we actually help others, again with aspiration bodhicitta in heart, and then we begin to go help others, to help them cut away pain and suffering. To those who are weighed down by suffering, we offer relief. And some of this is, if appropriate, we give some insights from the Dharma, skillfully. We're not to go make more Buddhists, much less, more Kagyupas, much less more Drigong Kagyupas. That's not the point. The point is that when appropriate, we share Dharma in this day and time, because labels can be such obstacles. We might have to find indirect ways to share the Dharma with people around us. Do it with kindness, do it with skill. This is important. So chiefly, the first line of verse 30, chiefly, this is what we have to aim at doing. Drive away the darkness of their ignorance. Now, before we can drive away the darkness of their ignorance, we need to drive away the darkness of our ignorance. So we need to do that. Now, in order to drive away the darkness of our ignorance, we not only have to develop wisdom, but wisdom cannot be developed if there isn't also the development of what we call merit. Merit, as I've said before, is the fuel, and wisdom is the fire. If you have a very big fire initially, but not enough fuel, like oil, like things to burn, to sustain that fire, then fire goes out. Likewise, if all you have is fuel, and you have no spark to kind of burn the fuel to start a fire, also not very useful. So chiefly we accumulate, or we develop both wisdom and merit. These are two indispensable. One way to summarize the work of the entire path from a state of confusion into the state of Buddha is the development of these two aspects. Then in terms of like the paramitas, the 6 perfections of bodhisattvas, it is said that the first 5 more directly pertains to the development of merit, and the 6th paramita, the paramita of wisdom, is the development of wisdom. Now, of course, this is just a general way of dividing things. You should not think, that the first 5 paramitas can become paramitas in the absence of wisdom. Likewise, you should not think, that the paramita of wisdom, that it is actually wisdom if you don't have generosity, disciplined conduct, patience, diligence, and meditative concentration. They are all interrelated. Just when we are talking, just when we are trying to get a clearer picture of all the different elements, we necessarily have to arrange them into boxes, put them into categories. But what it is it doesn't have these kinds of lines. So I need to emphasize that. Sometimes we think, oh, there's these lines, It's not like that. Then in the last 6 verses of this chapter, Shantideva concludes by summarizing again, reminding us the qualities of someone who has bodhicitta. So the focus in the last 6 verses is persons who have bodhicitta. In the last 2 sections is aspiration bodhicitta as a quality of mind, as a state of mind. Action bodhicitta, as like how to actualize that state of mind. Then this last 6 verses is talking about a person with bodhicitta. So hopefully, you and me, someone with bodhicitta. This is how the qualities of that someone are going to be. These last 6 verses. So if you want to know, like, oh, do I have bodhicitta or not? Look at these qualities here. Your bodhisattva vow identity card, because some lamas, some centers, they do that, that is no real proof that you have bodhicitta. It only means that you attended the ceremony. Then even if you happen to practice at a center, at a monastery, at a nunnery, where there's a designated section for bodhisattvas, and you get to stand in there, again, no proof, that you are a bodhisattva, that you have bodhicitta. Or your guru says, oh, you get to wear the red zen, or the red and the white zen, and the white skirt or the red skirt, all of that, that's not, doesn't say anything about whether you have or you don't have bodhicitta. If you want to know, do I have bodhicitta or not, look at these 6 verses. So in praising the greatness of someone with bodhicitta, what Shantideva is doing, of course, he's not trying to puff up, the pride of someone with bodhicitta, but it's his way of saying to us, look at this. This is someone with bodhicitta. Do you have bodhicitta? So let's together read verse 31 to 36. If someone who returns a favor is deserving of some praise, why need we speak of bodhisattvas, those who do good even unsolicited? People praise as virtuous donors those who with contempt support a field with plain and ordinary food, a moment's gift that feeds for only half a day. What need is there to speak of those who long bestow on countless multitudes the peerless joy of blissful Buddhahood, the ultimate fulfillment of their hopes? All those who harbor evil in their minds against such lords of generosity, the Buddha's heirs, will stay in hell, the mighty sage has said, for ages equal to the moments of their malice. But joyous and devoted thoughts will yield abundant fruits in greater strength, even in great trouble. Bodhisattvas never bring forth wrong, their virtues naturally increase. To them in whom this precious jewel of mine is born, to them I bow. I go for refuge to those springs of happiness who bring their very enemies to perfect bliss. So we quickly go through this. So the first verse here, 31, says, when someone, who returns a favor, then generally people praise them and say, oh, this person is so grateful, so has gratitude. And it says, but what about bodhisattvas? Bodhisattvas do good for others, even without being asked. So if we want to know, do I have bodhicitta? Then it's like, well, do I do this? Do I do good for others, even without being asked? So that's something we think about. Uh, 32 is using the example or contrasting point of saying, like a rich person, who doesn't want to deal with beggars, because in many traditional societies, when you're rich, beggars kind of gather outside your house, gather where you go. So it's describing a scene where, just out of contempt, like, I don't want to look at this, and they give some cheap food just to shoo them away. And it says, like, even people who do that, other people kind of see, and don't know, will say, oh, wow, this person is so generous. Then it says, but a bodhisattva, in 33, a bodhisattva, someone with bodhicitta, is thinking of the ultimate happiness of others, is giving and acting on the basis of nurturing, providing for the long-term happiness of beings. Now, verse 34, I can tell you right away that I'm a little bit uncomfortable with it, but I'm not uncomfortable with what Shantideva is saying. I am uncomfortable with how I have seen this verse being used rather commonly to kind of be a passive-aggressive, or maybe just outright aggressive threat to people to behave themselves. That is not Shantideva's intention. but I've certainly seen the logic of the seeming logic of verse 34 being used in that way. So we have to be careful. Do not turn dharma into weapon. Do not use dharma to harm others. Yeah, so on the surface level, right, this verse 34 is saying, like the Buddha has taught, those who harbor evil intentions towards those who have bodhicitta, the bodhisattvas, they will stay in the hell realms for as long as, for ages equal to the moments of their malice. Okay? So on the surface, it seems to be saying, like, those who are angry at bodhisattvas, they will go to hell. So when we hear this, we think, it's some kind of punishment for having malice towards bodhisattvas. But I think the context of this verse is, remember that who did Shantideva teach this to? He taught this to his community of monks. So presumably, right, he's saying, all of you have to assume that all of us here have given rise to aspiration bodhicitta. Now, in the real world, even in the monastery, even in Nalanda, right? Even if a bunch of people who have given rise to aspiration bodhicitta, there will still be times, where you are disappointed with someone, when you are angry with someone, when you have been hurt by someone. Essentially, Shantideva is saying here, don't bear evil intentions. Don't have malice against anyone, especially your fellow practitioners. Yeah? Being disappointed, being hurt, that's quite understandable, because no one in the end can live up to our expectations, But to go from being hurt, being disappointed, into having malice, meaning having harmful intentions, especially towards fellow practitioners. And I think we can even expand this and not just say, just Buddhists. But have you noticed, we are especially harsh on spiritual people and figures, especially, who have fallen, who have not lived up to our expectation. We can be so harsh against them. And part of that is, I think, us wanting to separate ourselves, from the problem. So to me, this is an advice to us, a warning to us. Be more, don't be so harsh. I'm not saying, if you see a spiritual person, especially a leader or whatever, doing wrong, and you cover for them, and then you promote them, and then maybe other people get harmed. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about here not bearing malice, like harmful feelings and intentions towards fellow practitioners, towards spiritual people of whatever religion, meaning people who are trying to be good. Don't bear malice against them, even if they don't live up to our expectations. Our time here is very brief, Don't hold on to resentment, grudges, malice, especially, again, towards those who are also trying their best. In this case, those who also have bodhicitta. We all make mistakes, Some of us, because of our circumstances, the mistakes that we make can have big repercussions. Some of us, because of our circumstances, the mistake that we make, small effect. But if you look at that, it's just circumstantial. It's not that the person who made a big mistake have bigger kind of evil intentions. Not necessarily. It's just the circumstances that they are in. And that our mistakes have been small is also because our circumstances. And sometimes, both you and I know, we have so little control over our circumstances. So the contrasting point is given in verse 35. And instead, if we have joyous and devoted thoughts, then they will yield abundant fruits in greater strength. So what Shantideva criticizes at 34 and warns us against, in 35 he also tells us, however, there's something even more powerful than that, which is joyous and devoted thoughts. Devoted here again, it's not talking about being devoted to someone who has bodhicitta but has done wrong. Not talking about that. Talking about devoted to bodhicitta, devoted to the greater good. So instead of getting caught up in being angry and wanting to even like cause harm to someone who we judge as having failed in living up to what we expect them to be as bodhisattvas, Shantideva says, instead of getting like basically destroying your own well-being over that, you should focus with joyous and devoted thoughts towards bodhicitta. Then greater fruits will come. So here then he says, even in great trouble. So meaning even when we are challenged by what's all around us, maybe our Dharma brothers and sisters not living up to our expectations, maybe even our teachers not living up to our expectations. But remember, at the end of the day, we are the ones who need to uphold our Bodhisattva vow. So even in great trouble, Bodhisattvas never bring forth wrong. Will not get into, like we say, righteous anger. No, let that go. Instead, we will continue to let virtues increase. So 36, Shantideva says, to them in whom this precious jewel of mine is born, to them I bow. I go for refuge to those springs of happiness who bring their very enemies to perfect bliss. So even their enemies, even those who seek to harm them, they always work on bringing them to a state of bliss. So that is the definition of someone with bodhicitta. So again, if we get carried away and think, oh, this is just about admiring someone over there, then we're missing that. What Shantideva is showing is like, basically Shantideva says, if you have bodhicitta has arisen in your mind, I will pay respect to you. I will see you as an object of refuge. Now, whether, I qualify to be Shantideva's object of refuge or not is beside the point. Here also it's showing us, if you know how to learn from someone, you can acquire all the qualities you see in that person. The faults of that person, you leave alone. So Shantideva, obviously advanced Bodhisattva, but he says, to anyone who has given rise to bodhicitta, even if they are very far from achieving perfection, I go for refuge, he says. Because bodhicitta is so amazing. Yes. Then, on the other hand, if we don't know how to learn from someone, even Buddha Shakyamuni in front of us, we will learn the wrong things. Like his, jealous cousin Devadatta. Knew Shakyamuni very well, but did not see any qualities in Shakyamuni, except he only saw Shakyamuni as an object of jealousy. Then it didn't matter that he was the cousin. In fact, then it became worse. Yeah, so we have reached the end of allocated time for today, but I want to leave a little bit of time in case you have any questions or comments. So as you think of the questions and comments, I also want to say right now is in the month of Sagadawa. So fundamentally, please remember, the Buddha did not teach the world The Buddha did not give the Dharma to the world in order to start a personality cult. So he doesn't need us to worship him. What he started wasn't a personality cult. What he started is an example cult, so to say. He says, follow my example, become like me. Yes, you can admire me, but the whole point of even admiring me is to know that you too can become like me. So questions or comments or clarification needed?
Guru, there's the questions in the chat room. Can we understand the verse 34 like hell in mind? I mean, like a state of confusion and hatred.
Can we understand? Let's see. I want to see if I understand. Yeah, you can say that. In fact, hell is not just a place out there. And even a place out there is only possible if the place is also in here, so to say, a state of mind. So for example, for some people, New York City is hell. But because I have been in the country for so long, feeling stuck there, now I'm here, I like, oh, like a pure land. It's mind tricks, I'm doing to myself. Oh, pure land, So yes, in a way, this hell is a state of mind, but this state of mind corresponds with what's here. So because of my state of mind, even when I walk by piles of trash, it's like, oh, look, people living life. But if the state of mind is like, oh, right? I've also lived in places where it feels like, every night, there's a bunch of elves combing the lawn, the front lawn of every house, with a comb, so that all the grasses are pointing in one direction. Picture perfect, But even then, you walk by and you feel like, ugh, this is a creepy place. This is I don't know what's happening on the other side of those doors and walls, because it's so perfect. So yes, it's a state of mind, but the state of mind corresponds with what you pick up as well. So hell can become heaven, heaven can become hell. Yeah, so today we will conclude here. We'll conclude with the Bodhicitta dedication. So then next class is on Tuesday. We're back to the Tuesday schedule. Yeah, so we'll be on the Tuesday, Saturday schedule until we have to change. So if you are registered for this course, then you will get email updates. That's one way we can get the news out there. Otherwise, we'll try to post updates on Facebook. But I know not all of you have access to Facebook. So we will try to keep everyone informed if in case a certain class we cannot meet. So we'll try our best.
Guru, there's one more question in the chat room.
Yeah, go ahead, Jasper.
Letting go of ego is the hardest part of most practitioners. What are the steps we can take, and how much of effort must we put into remove ego?
Oh, that's not a question. That's just a statement. And then the answer is, this is what we're doing with this whole series, you know. Learning the 84,000 dharmas and practicing the 84,000 dharmas is the scary answer. Then knowing that, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Don't be so judgmental to yourself, don't be so judgmental to others. Find ways to inspire yourself. Avoid using judgment and guilt to try to make positive changes in your own heart and your own mind. So with regards to your own development, do try to find ways to continuously inspire yourself to improve, so to say, but avoid judgment and guilt. Then in terms of finding that inspiration, if you ask me, I would say, also don't put too much of how you're going to be inspired on other people. As we say, don't count other people's cows. Because first of all, they're not your cows, so why go count other people's cows? Secondly, other people might lose those cows, and then what? So be inspired, if you want, by the fact of how they have found these cows, and then you need to go put in effort to find your own cows, so to say. So that even if other people lose their cows, you know, you won't be derailed. And that is, you know, how we can reduce self-grasping. Sometimes when we make, you know, destroying ego, overcoming self-grasping as such a big thing, you know, then it really seems impossible. But not to be disturbed when things don't go your way. Train that, you know. Understand interdependence. See, ego naturally calms down. Self-grasping is pacified. Not burdening others with our expectations. Self-grasping naturally is pacified. So these kind of small things that we do, this is where it accumulates. This is where it actually takes place. Rather than some abstract notion of like, oh, I have to give up ego, you know, I have to destroy self-clinging as some big momentous event. No, we build up, we build up, we build up. 장주 샘조렘보지 마게 바남게 개바냠바 메바야 고네 공두 배월쇼. Thank you, and we'll see you all again soon. Goodbye, Tata. Good evening. Have a good
Gracias.
sleep.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, so
Thank
those
you, Dr. Lee.
yeah, those of
Gracias.
you in Asia, you know, I said, you know, 乜嘢教都唔相干啦，最緊要可以瞓覺。So the Dharma practice is for that, you know. Don't get so dogmatic into this 教嗰個教呢個教，最緊要可以瞓覺。That means your conscience is, your heart is clear. So sleep well. Then the rest of you, have a good day. Tata.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias, doctor.
Thank you. Enjoy
Gracias,
your
doctor.
time.
Gracias, Dr. Lee.
Thank you, Dr. Lee.
Gracias, Dr. Lee.